everyone, welcome back. This is a marine biologist plays Subnautica, now not for the first time because I've already played it. If you have not seen my playthrough series where I play this game for the first time, please do so. But I recently made a video where I compiled all of my different reactions and put them all in one video, and that one has gone pretty viral. It's got almost 100k views as of recording this, which is the highest number of views that I've ever gotten. I'm really excited about that. The highest number of views I've ever gotten on a YouTube long form video. You might know me as oceanfilly across the internet. I do my Let's Change That videos where I tell you some fun marine facts. Althea, please don't do that. My cat will probably intervene. She'll be in this video a lot, I'm sure, because that's just what she does. And if you watch any of my playthroughs, you'll know that she does that. She has to participate. But anyway, I recently got my PhD. I have done a lot of research in marine biology, in the field of marine biology, and thus this game is kind of the perfect scenario for me. This is kind of if you're a marine biologist on a different planet. Unwillingly so in this game because you crash land and you weren't planning to be a marine biologist, but not the case in Subnautica Below Zero, which I'll do a video like this for that one as well. But I had a lot of people in that compilation video ask me if I could do a compilation of me talking about the biology of Subnautica, and trying to capture all of those clips together would probably be a little bit difficult because I don't always remember where they all are. And also I think it would just be fun just to have a video where I just swim around or go around and we just talk about the biology of Subnautica. So first and foremost, we're starting off in the safe shallows and then we'll kind of go from there. And I want to preface this by saying that anytime that I talk about like, hey, this would not happen on Earth, the way that it works in this system or in this game is not realistic to what we have on Earth, that does not mean that I am saying all of these terrible things against what potentially is your favorite game, or that I'm like crapping on your favorite game. I really enjoyed this playthrough. If you watch my like 24 video long playthrough that I did of this game for the first time, I really enjoyed it. I'm not crapping on anything that you really love or like saying it's terrible. I'm just saying that that's the way that it is that it may not be realistic to what would actually happen here on Earth in real life. I know that this is obviously fake and that it's supposed to be on a different world, but for the exercise, we're here to think about, okay, well, if this did exist, how would things work in this? So the way that we'll do this is I'm just going to go around for a while. I don't know how long this video is going to be. We're going to find out. I don't think it'll be 4 hours like some of my other playthroughs, but it certainly will not be 10 minutes. That I can guarantee you. But anyway, we're just going to go around and talk about the real life comps for some of these things, and then I'll also talk about like how would it have worked in this type of environment, okay? One of the first things to kind of get us straight here is that currently we are in what's known as the subtidal zone. And in the subtidal zone, you have different zones, right? I have predominantly worked in the intertidal zone. The intertidal zone is where the land meets the sea. So tide pools, for example, or like if you go on the beach and there's the waves that are coming up, you're in the intertidal zone. Subtidal zone is beyond that zone, and it usually tends to be closer to the coast. And it can get deep, but not necessarily so. But we are currently in the subtidal zone. We are beyond where the land meets the sea, even though there are areas here that are really shallow. It's still subtidal. I've done work in the subtidal zone and the intertidal zone, but we are currently in the subtidal zone. Now they call each of these biomes, which is not really accurate because biomes tend to be much bigger. These are actually more so ecosystems, and we'll talk about these. You can hear sounds, by the way, when you're underwater. I'm going to jump out of this for a second. I think they did a good job with the sound of the bubbles, because with the bubbles, it sounds exactly like when you're scuba diving. But I would say that this is pretty similar to what it sounds like when you're diving, there is sound underwater, but it tends to be really quiet. You can't tell where sound is coming from when you're snorkeling or scuba diving. Oops, sorry. Sometimes my internet gets a little bit weird, so sometimes it'll look kind of funky. So if you're like, oh, why does it look weird? That's why. So please bear with me. Sorry. I don't have all the professional equipment that some of your favorite streamers have, okay? I just started doing this on the down low while I am looking for a postdoc position, okay? It is what it is. But anyway, I also have to watch my air. I've upgraded a lot, so I'm pretty good. But anyway, you can't tell where sounds are coming from, which can be really dangerous with boats. But you can hear different sounds underwater, and like sometimes you feel like clicking and stuff. What's real fun is when your bones crack underwater. That is a sound. One of the things that I have complained about a lot with this for both games is that it's weird because like you currently have bubbles that are coming up, so you are scuba diving. However, sometimes the way that they talk about it, or with the amount of oxygen that you have, it's more akin to free diving, which is where you're like going down with like a breath hold. You also like can shoot straight to the surface like this and be fine and not die, which in real life, I just need you all to know, you can't do if you're scuba diving. Because you could get the bends, which is decompression sickness, and it has to do with as you're going up higher, you have like nitrogen, for example, and it can be very painful for people as it expands as you're going up. And then you also should not be holding your breath. So if I was down here and then I just held my breath, when I've been scuba diving and like breathing on a tube and then go up here, you could have lung overexpansion injury, which is not great. It could kill you. So we don't want that. But it's because everything is expanding, because everything gets compressed. So as you get down, things get compressed. You take up more oxygen, which this game does do. So deeper, it will tell you, oh, you've passed this many meters, your oxygen levels are greatly decreased. That's accurate because as you go down, things get more compressed, you take up more oxygen versus when you're in somewhere shallow. So if you're swimming or scuba diving in somewhere that's shallow and you're on a tank of air, you can last much, much longer than you can if you're diving deep. So you're also supposed to do something that's called a safety stop. And safety stop is at 15 feet. And you hover there for however long your dive computer tells you, or the dive tables if you're using dive tables, and then you're able to rise to the surface, and that's just to help prevent getting the bends, which you don't want. But anyway, now that we've done all this, and unfortunately it's going to be nighttime, yeah, that'll be fun. Aboard, Captain. Nice. I'm not going to turn the lights just yet. But anyway, this place is really cool on this planet because there's a lot of bioluminescence, and we have a lot of bioluminescence on Earth, but not to this degree. It is interesting from, again, remember, I'm not saying terrible things about your favorite game. I like this game too. I'm just thinking as a biologist. For a lot of these, for example, I'm just going to get out of the water, or get out into the water again. You have the rabbit ray here, and the rabbit ray, I can very clearly see it, right? This can be a good thing if they're trying to communicate with others. However, it can be a bad thing with predators. But because of the coloration that these have, and I don't remember, let's go look. Ah, poison, there it is. See, so the people that created this game did a good job with creating these, because many of these, they clearly were either talking to a biologist or were looking things up. So this is what I wanted to confirm. The rabbit ray has lots of pretty colors, and oftentimes if you see lots of pretty colors in nature, it's actually what's known as aposematic coloration, which means that if you eat this, you could have a bad time because they're probably poisonous. And in this case, it says that they are an herbivorous aquatic life form, and they appear to live serene and solitary lives with few predators, a natural sense of curiosity, and awesomely poisonous flesh. So in this case, the rabbit ray can get away with having this bright coloration because it is signaling to other animals around it, if you eat me, you're not going to have a good time. You're going to hate yourself, right? And thus, many of these might be just signaling, hey, if you eat me, you're not going to have a good time. But then there's other ones, for example. Somebody is swimming over top of me. I believe that was... it slipped my brain. Where is my... shit. Goodness. Anyway, what I was trying to say was with the peepers, with the peepers, you can see their eyes glow in the dark. And, you know, I'm not quite sure why. But it's really cool because you have all of the plants that are glowing in the dark, lots of these other different animals that glow in the dark. They're bioluminescent. It's very cool. I like that part about this, and it's cool to me that all of these different species evolved with this. There she is. There's my sea moth, my beloved. There we go. One of the key things that we need to talk about here when we're talking about the biology is that when you're talking about natural selection and evolution, those probably do happen on this planet as well. Can you see my cat in the background? Meow. Sweet child, you don't get fed for another like 45 minutes. You're fine, baby. Anyway, when you are... Before I was really interrupted. Just like a classic stream. What are you doing? It's just sitting there. Anyway, when you have natural selection and evolution, these probably would also exist, these processes would probably also, oh hi kitty, would probably also exist here on 4546b. That one's really just spinning in circles. But anyway, I hope I didn't just crash into a bush. Natural selection happens to individuals. For example, I think I just crashed my sea moth into a rabbit ray. That would be natural selection. Natural selection acted on that rabbit ray, unfortunately, because it did not dodge out of my way fast enough. It wasn't smart enough to outsmart me. And so natural selection as a process took it out. But everybody likes to think of natural selection as this like overlord that's pulling all of these strings. And they're like, you survive and you survive, but you don't survive. That's not how it works. It is just a process that happens. If they don't have the specific traits that help them to better survive the environment that they're in, whether or not that be the social environment, which means the environment of the other individuals that are around them of their own species, or sometimes it's the biotic environment of the different predators that are there, or what food supply that they have access to. Or you have the abiotic environment, which is the salinity, how salty the water is, the temperature of the water, other pressures that could be in the water. But anyway, all of those different pressures make it to where you either have the specific traits that work in that environment or you don't. Though natural selection will act on the individual level, it will take out individuals like that rabbit ray. Whereas evolution is something that happens on what we call a population level. The population consists of all of the different rabbit rays in this area that interbreed with one another. The population, all of those different rabbit rays, can all evolve as a group, but the individuals don't evolve. That's natural selection acts upon the individuals, and then whoever's left to reproduce, those are then able to contribute to evolution at the population level, if that makes sense to everyone, right? And so if the individual rabbit rays, for example, are not able to outsmart predators, then they would be consumed and they would not be able to pass on those genes to the next generation of rabbit rays, right? That means that the ones that lived were probably the smarter ones that were able to outmaneuver predators, And those are the ones that pass on their genes to the next generation, and the next generation, therefore, will likely have more intelligent individuals. Now, what could happen is that their predators might also evolve some kind of tolerance to that toxin, and then they would have to start co-evolving together. So the rabbit rays would start evolving some kind of more toxic or different type of toxin to help protect them from predators, where that predator would start co-evolving in tune with the rabbit rays, some kind of resistance, or not resistance, but like some kind of tolerance to be able to consume those not being sick. But yeah, nature's wild. But let's actually, now that it's daylight, go around and look at things. One of the really important things, and here comes spoiler territory, one of the important things to remember is that we know from both games that the Kharaa, which is a bacteria that infects all of the life, which I have questions about because it's very, very difficult to find any kind, because I also do host-parasite interactions and think about disease ecology. It's really difficult to find any... Can you not? I'm trying to teach people about biology. Anyway, I've also just been doing a lot of sitting because I'm talking. Sorry, we were supposed to be exploring. But anyway, what I was trying to say before I was rudely interrupted, which I assumed was going to happen, is that it's really rare that you have diseases that are able to cross lots of different barriers and attack multiple different species, whether they're vertebrates, invertebrates, etc., which are very different from one another. I think I didn't like that I had my lights on. Anyway, so that's kind of wild to think about. But anyway, hi kitty cat. The Kharaa bacterium is infecting everything, right? And we learn that what we're observing here is only part of the original ecosystem because many of the species died off. So this is kind of what survived. They're not the healthiest that they should be. And what we're seeing is just kind of what's left over. We don't know what this ecosystem might have looked like before the Kharaa bacterium was here and what kind of life it killed off. It seems to be doing okay because ecosystems can recuperate, but it's just very important to remember that in this case, or in other cases where many species have died off, it can take a long time. How dare you? It can stop following me! It can take a long time for these ecosystems to rebuild themselves. Now, I've been using the term ecosystems. They call these biomes in the game, but they are more akin to ecosystems. I will say that it's a little bit confusing because you have the coral reef ecosystem, the like shallow tropical, subtropical kind of system up here. And then you have the kelp forest right next to it. Kelps are normally in very cold water. I have experience in both tropical and these are called like temperate reefs, places that have kelp, for example. I did cold water in Chile, and Chile has what's called temperate reefs, which have kelp. They can have some of the tall kelps, like it's called Macrocystis is the name of the genus. I didn't see those where we were. We had more of Lysonia trabeculata, which is kind of what we would describe as like little kelp bushes, essentially. The same difference. It's very cold. The water is not as clear because it has a lot more nutrients in it, and there's a lot more like algae, just in, like little microalgae in the water. I'm gonna be attacked. Anyway, but those tend to be very productive. Speaking of Kharaa, this one is infected with the Kharaa. It has all the little green pustules on it. Poor guy. All right.
Vital signs stabilizing.
Anyway, kelp forest ecosystems, as I mentioned, they tend to be cold water, and they need those nutrients. You're probably not going to find them in water that is warmer than like 70 degrees. Let me find my sea moth. Oh, they're currently attacking my sea moth. Love that for me. My sea moth will tell you what the temperature is here.
Welcome
So here's
aboard, Captain.
28 degrees Fahrenheit, which is a little too warm for kelps, but this is a different planet, right? Could be different. But usually the Can you all stop? Usually the visibility, especially in the summer, is garbage. Which the visibility here is not that great in comparison to what it is in the safe shallows. But usually the visibility in these kind of sucks because it's like turbulent water. It has a lot of stuff in the water, a lot of algae, a lot of sediment sometimes, depending on how turbulent the waves are. But you're not going to have kelp like this directly next to coral. But again, this is a different ecosystem. But it is just something that kind of bothers me a little bit. But kelp forests are really important. They produce a lot of oxygen. They serve as food. They serve as nurseries for many animals. When they're cut down, because they are used for different materials, when they're cut down, it can take a very long time for them to grow back. For example, you can cut them down and you might go back to the place where they've been cut down 2 years later and they're still not regrown, and you lose a lot of the diversity, a lot of the different species that are all in the same place. And a group that is not as diverse, a location, an ecosystem that is not as diverse, is not as healthy usually, which is important to acknowledge. Now, you'll also notice here on 4546b that there are a lot of organisms, which is just an individual. I'm just talking about individual organisms. A lot of different organisms, a lot of different species are in some places and not in others. And then there's some that are just kind of all over the place. For example, we tend to see the boomerangs kind of all over the place. We tend to see the bladderfish are in multiple different places, multiple different ecosystems. They're both in the deep and they're up here. And we see some other species like the peepers that are kind of all over the place. And then there are some that are only found in specific ecosystems, which is common. There are some species that are what's known as cosmopolitan, where they can be found all over the world. Then there are some species that they are endemic, which means that they are only found in one spot. They're endemic to one specific area. Now here in Subnautica, they have the different levels of critters, and by levels I mean you have like your little guys, your big guys, your medium-sized guys, you have the big predators, you have the herbivores, which is true to what we have here on Earth. You have the different trophic levels, is what those are called, and you'll have the primary producers that will be on your bottom levels versus at the very top you have your consumers or your top consumers. Hello. I'm just kind of watching this one nervously. And you need everybody in your ecosystem. You need the primary producers such as your autotrophic individuals like plants, these kelp, which by the way, kelp are not plants. But you need lots of different players to create a healthy ecosystem. You need the little guys that eat the plants, and then you need the slightly bigger guys that are going to eat the guys that eat the plants, right? But everything plays a really important role in its ecosystem. You have to have your predators like the scary leviathans that we haven't encountered yet. You have to have your kelps, for example. You have to have those middle consumers. Everything plays a vital and important role, and if you have too many of one thing, then you may not have enough of the other. For example, if you have a situation in a coral reef where there are too many algae, the algae can outcompete your corals, and in that case, then there's not as many corals, and the corals provide a lot of shelter and provide habitat for many organisms that are in that coral reef, and it'll throw everything out of balance. So everything is really important. But if you have too many algae, that means that you probably don't have the consumer of algae that is able to kind of keep everything in check. And I imagine that's probably what happened here on this planet in the beginning. Is that an egg? I don't need any more eggs. But I imagine that's probably what happened here in the beginning, because the beginning of the Kharaa outbreak, because many animals probably died off, and then it kind of threw everything out of whack. And so everybody that survived here were those that were the strongest equipped to survive what happened, but their populations might be kind of wonky. And what I mean by that is sometimes when you have situations where there's only so many that survive, you have what's known as a bottleneck effect, and only some of the population has these specific traits, whereas you might have had a bigger diversity of traits beforehand, and then now you have quite a few less, which means that they may not be as well equipped to handle whatever the environment throws at them, and that's not a place that a population needs to be. Now, currently, I hear a Reaper Leviathan. I hate them with a burning fiery passion, which you should know. But, yeah, they use echolocation. If you can hear them, then they can see you. And there are many animals that use echolocation. Hello, buddy. I don't like those either. Many animals use echolocation, particularly in a marine context. We're thinking about marine mammals, and they can send out these sound waves that will bounce off of different parts of the environment, such as fish or the abiotic environment. For example, if it was sending out these sound waves right here, it would feel that this is right here, so it would know, oh, I need to like move before I crash into it, right? Echolocation is pretty cool. But the sound waves will bounce back and then they can feel it. Hello kitty. Many of the marine mammals that use echolocation will feel it come back in their jaw and then they can process it. Don't know how it works for the Reaper Leviathans, but I don't want to find out because I don't like them. So we're gonna go... I don't know. Let's just wander. We're gonna wander. One of the things I do want to mention, let me find it. What it tells us is that this suggests an evolutionary path that is quite different from other organisms on 4546b, most of which are vertebrate in nature. This is fascinating to me. Because on Earth, the vast majority of animals that we have here are actually invertebrates. There are way more invertebrates than there are vertebrates. Now remember, vertebrates have a backbone, they have a spine, and there's some other features that they have, versus invertebrates, which do not have a spine. And there are other features to them. A lot of people erroneously think of invertebrates as being more simplistic, and they can be, but not always. For example, think about cephalopods, which are incredibly intelligent and very complex, and they have really fascinating biology. I don't know where we're going, but we're going. We're going places I probably shouldn't be going, but we're going, okay? Anyway, I think we're in the mountains, which, you know what, it shouldn't be it, but we're here. If we see a Reaper, we see a Reaper. Anyway, oh my god. Well, the Warpers won't bother me anymore, which is nice, because I already beat the game. So that's great. Anyway, woo! Yay! Yeah, I want to go here. What I was trying to say was invertebrate life far outweighs vertebrate life here on Earth. There are so many beetles. There's so many beetles. So it's really fascinating to me that many of the animals on this planet are actually vertebrate animals, because that's just very different than what we see here. One of the other things to remember too is that anytime that you watch any kind of sci-fi or you play a sci-fi game like this, they'll often... Hello, Reginald. Oh, that's not a Reginald. That's a spadefish. Anytime that they say, like, oh, this is a vertebrate, this is an invertebrate, this is a fish, this is a gastropod, it actually would not be like a gastropod, which gastropods are snails, for example, snails and slugs, but it would not be the same. I also have to be cautious because I do know that there is a ghost leviathan around here. Anyway, what I was trying to say is that if they say that there's a gastropod, it's not a true gastropod, right? Because that evolutionary history is specific to Earth. That evolved from a specific common ancestor on Earth to create that gastropod lineage that we know today through a combination of similar morphology. Morphology has to do with like the physical appearance that you can measure, and the genetic information that we can gather, phylogenetic information. That's how we classify and determine which animals fit into which groups. Those all have a specific evolutionary history to get us to the gastropods that we have today, and that is specific to Earth. So anything that we would find on a different planet would not be a true gastropod like Earth. It has a completely different common ancestor than the common ancestor of the gastropods on Earth. It has completely different evolutionary history, and so it's more so that it's gastropod-like versus being an actual gastropod. Here's all of that really cool bioluminescent life that we have. It's interesting too because there's a lot of plants that are able to survive, or like plant-like things that are able to survive in deeper water. And there is a cutoff on our planet for how deep a lot of plants can go. So like seagrasses, for example, can't live very deep. Seagrasses are actual plants. Kelps can't live more than like usually 30 meters because they need access to sunlight. But there are many different plant-like animals that are down here without sunlight. And so it's really cool. It would be very fascinating to figure out. Well, sorry, it's glitching a little bit. It would be very fascinating to figure out what they're getting their energy from. But anyway, we're gonna go into some of the deeper water. These darn crab squids. I will say that there are... Okay, well, it didn't get me. That's great. The crab squids are really fascinating. There are animals that use electricity, but I'm concerned. There's a lot of animals that use electricity, not the same amount of shock factor that those can do. But many of them will use them in freshwater, and then there are some that are able to like use electricity in saltwater. For example, I'm trying to think of the name, and I just went completely blank. Oh, the northern stargazer. They have an electrical organ in their head, and they can shock you if you step on them. So many of them will use it for protection, but there is also a lot of evidence in many other species to show that they use it for communication, which is super exciting and interesting. I don't know if the crab squids use theirs for that. My least favorite animals. Listen, buddy, go away. I will say that these are fascinating because... Is it gonna... Yep, sure is. I thought I might be able to dodge that, but it looks interesting because the way that its exoskeleton looks to me, it looks very similar to some annelid worms with the segmentation. It's really cool. Anyway, a lot of people think of the deep ocean as being a place that doesn't have a lot of life, and there are certain places where that's true. But then there are plenty of other places, like if you look at Mbari streams, that they will find these hotbeds of lots of different life, which is really exciting. Let me get some food. There's also a lot of bioluminescent life
Vital
down here, which
signs
is really fun.
stabilizing.
And you'll see a lot of different life. I think it's really cool that they have all of these thermal vents and you can find a lot of different life that's down here very close to the thermal vents. Oh, I don't want to hit that. Anyway, but that's pretty common too. There will be a lot of animals and species that will use, or bacteria that will use, sorry fish. So instead of using sunlight to make your food, you use chemicals to make your food, which I imagine that many are doing down here. Trying to get around these. I've also noticed that whenever like you crash into something or like you hit something or when one of the predators eats another animal, like we just saw on camera recently, that you see that it's a yellow color, just like that. So I'm hypothesizing that I guess they have yellow-based blood, which is really interesting. There are lots of animals on Earth that have different colored blood. For example, so we have red blood because we have iron, right? But horseshoe crabs is what I was trying to say, have blue blood because they have copper-based blood, but there's also purple blood, there is green blood. It was interesting that here they seem to have evolved yellow blood, which is quite different. Just kind of wandering around. I think we're gonna go up this way. Yep, this is where I would like to go. One of the other things that I want to talk about, while that thing is screaming at me, I really want to talk about this. This is the fauna and reproductive data. Now, in my original playthrough, there's like a 15-minute rant where I start talking about this, so I will not go as long as I did there. But here, let's just read it. It says, extensive alien research data on the local fauna with a special focus on their reproductive methods. Core conclusions have been synthesized. The aliens discover the life forms on the planet have just one sex. They observed local organisms engaging in asexual reproduction. All healthy individuals tested were capable of egg laying. Eggs usually require genetic material from another of the species. In rare case, only one parent was required, with the evolutionary mutation introduced by the effects of the environment itself. So this is where it gets confusing for me as somebody who thinks about and has researched reproductive behavior, sexual selection, sex in general. Some of this is really interesting to think about, and some of it is confusing because they talk about you have asexual reproduction, but they require two parents. And then they're talking about they require genetic material from another of the species, which doesn't make any sense. So I did mention previously that they did relatively do a good job throughout most of this of making it as like biologically like quote unquote accurate as possible, but this doesn't make a lot of sense to me. But I will say, as we're zooming along, that sex, as we know it, is complicated. And people who spend a lot of time thinking about sex, and when I'm talking about sex, there's multiple different levels of how we talk about sex. Sometimes sex can talk about specifically, like, are you talking about the act of reproduction? Sex can talk about the types of gametes that an organism has. Then there's like genetic sex. There's so many different levels of sex, and sex is not binary, and it's also complicated. People that research it will tell you we don't have an answer about, like, sex just doesn't fit into a one-size-fits-all box for everything. And the way that sex works for plants on Earth can be different than the way sex works, sorry for the fish that I just hit, the way that sex works for animals on Earth. it's really complicated, which makes it a fascinating subject to study. But it can be hard to define and hard to think about, and so you usually... Oh, that's wonderful. So you usually have to... I'm gonna see what it's gonna do here. You usually have to define what you're talking about when you're talking about sex, so... I want to see what it's gonna do. I want to see if it's gonna come down here. This will be a great example of a top predator in the ecosystem. These are necessary. Somebody else is bothering me. I don't know who else is bothering me. Ah, you, of course. Those suck. Anyway, where is it? It's up there. I can outrun it. I've done it before. I'll do it again. Anyway, I don't remember what I was talking about. I got distracted. See, this is why it was going to be difficult for me to try to cut. Ooh, a mesmer! We're not going to look at that right now. I don't want to die. Hello? I don't want to die. I want to look at that mesmer, but it's not gonna happen. Anyway, let's just go back to talking about sex. So when they say that there's one sex, sure, that's possible. Because again, we don't really understand sex that well. It's complicated. It's always more complicated than we think it's going to be. Even in cases where there are, like, quote-unquote, two sexes. Because you have, like, hormonal... God, they're everywhere. Well, there's those. Those are fine. I thought I saw a Reaper, but I did not. But you have, like, hormonal sex, for example. It's complicated. Which, for many of you, you might be, like, confused or frustrated by that answer, but it's complicated for the people that research it all the time. Hey, buddy. This is the boldest I've ever been with these. Huh. I don't actually think I've been over here. Oh, I know exactly where I am. Ah, I've not gone that way before. Well, let's get out of here. Okay, cool. Anyway, what I was trying to say is the one sex is fascinating for a couple of different reasons, particularly because they say they have one sex and they only have asexual reproduction. So asexual reproduction can be super useful in cases where there are not that many other organisms, or like other conspecifics is what we call them, so members of the same species that you can reproduce with. You also don't have to worry about finding any mates. You also don't have to worry about any of the potential problems that could happen with outcrossing, which is when there's two separate individuals that are reproducing with one another. You don't have to worry about, like, STIs and such, or in cases where the other sex is really aggressive, you don't have to worry about potentially getting injured, or in cases where the other sex will eat you, you don't have to worry about being eaten, which is great. Also, there's my base. Hello, base. And then asexual reproduction also, over time, produces more offspring than would be possible through two parents reproducing together, for like the cost of how many individuals like you had initially, if that makes sense. So let me explain it this way. If you have one asexual individual and that asexual individual has two babies, that individual has created two babies. Whereas if you have, think of it as two asexual individuals, asexual individual 1 has 2 babies, and asexual individual 2 also has 2 babies. So there's 4 in that next generation. Whereas if you had a case where you had the 2 sexes and they have to reproduce with each other, that's the 2 individuals, and let's say that they only have 2 babies each, then you're having the number of offspring in the next generation. So that comes into like the cost of sex, is what we call that. But some of the problems with asexual reproduction is that, especially when you have something like Kharaa, if you have any kind of disease that comes in, if they're not outcrossing, then they're not doing something that's called recombination. And recombination is what allows for the possibility of novel combinations of genes within the gene pool. What that means on a not fancy terms way is that you might have 2 individuals that when they have that recombination, it creates this novel gene combination that leads to a trait that makes them less susceptible to, for example, Kharaa. And then the individuals that are less susceptible to Kharaa would then reproduce with other individuals, and if they survive long enough, right? So let's say that the individuals that are able to survive the Kharaa live long enough to reproduce, and you have more and more of those individuals that have it over time, then they might be able to, over time, have a population that is able to deal with the Kharaa bacterium, and it's much better for the population survives. That is not a thing if you have asexual reproduction, because you're not joining another individual's genes to potentially make these novel gene combinations. Now there's plenty of species that have been able to reproduce, like Belduloid rotifers, which I hope I pronounced that correctly, where they haven't reproduced sexually in a very, very long time. I need to check on how many years it's been since they've done it, but it's been a very long time and they've been just fine. So it could be a situation like that here. We don't know. I'm getting cursory information, so I don't know. But it is a fascinating reproductive system that they have here. We haven't actually, I've talked about the corals, but I haven't looked at the corals. So let's kind of go up this way. And look at the corals, and we might be finished soon. But hopefully you have enjoyed our little perusal talking about the potential marine biology. Or not the potential marine biology. Well, I guess the potential biology of this place if it were to actually exist. Alright, there's me little life pod. Let's go into the corals. I'm gonna potentially hit so many fish. Ah! Alright. Corals are fun. There are different kinds of corals, and coral reefs are usually dominated by hard corals. And the hard corals are actually multiple animals. It's a colony of animals, and in this colony of animals, you have little polyps, is what they're called. And each of these little polyps also has symbiotic bacteria in it. It's called oceanfilly, and that's what helps to give it its color. And I'm trying, where are the corals? Corals provide habitat for many, many, many different species. And corals also have to be in very specific types of ecosystems or very specific types of abiotic environments. They have to have very, very clear water. If you've gone snorkeling or scuba diving in coral reefs, you'll notice most of the time that they tend to have really clear water, particularly in comparison to over there somewhere was the kelp forest. The corals can't handle lots of sediment or lots of really thick turbulence or turbid water, and so they need these really clear water ecosystems, and they have to be in warmer waters, but not too warm, because if they're too warm, or in cases where there's any kind of stress to the coral, they will spit out their zooxanthellae, and that's where you start experiencing coral bleaching. And they can recover,
Stabilizing.
but not always. These guys are just so wild looking to me. Oh, I just farted those out for me. Thank you, buddy. But anyway, sometimes I get distracted. Coral reefs. That's what I was talking about. Coral reefs have lots and lots of diversity, which we've talked about before. Remember, it's lots of different species in the same place. And if you don't have the coral heads there, if the corals are not alive, then the diversity just plummets because these provide food, habitat, resources for many different species. Many corals are considered keystone species. Keystone species are species that are like, a keystone is named after, there's a literal keystone in a lot of archways, and you have that there to kind of hold everything up. And keystone species hold up the ecosystem. And without them, it kind of falls apart. So some coral species are keystone species. We have like the coral tubes here, and then there's like the coral plates along the side, and then there's brain coral throughout here. Trying to find, so there's like the little coral plates down here. Ah! There's the mushrooms. Well, there were the coral plates. Oh, there they are. Coral shell plates. Corals can have lots of different types of structures, and then you get the coral tubes here and such. And one of the most important things that I want you to know is that if you see corals, you should not touch them. Don't touch them because they grow very, very slowly. Some may only grow like a centimeter a year. And so if you touch it or damage it, that's a lot of growth and a long time that it's been growing that has just been cut off instantly. Excuse me. And corals are very fragile and very sensitive, so please don't hurt them, cut them, do anything like that. Here you can see it's really green. And this is very similar to what it often looks like in kelp forest in the summer because of all of the algae, and it can be very difficult to see sometimes. We call that, again, turbid. And that just means that it's really productive. A lot of these colder water environments are super productive. They have a lot of algae, they have a lot of growth, they have a lot of organisms that are able to feed off of that. And you can see really rich ecosystems in kelp forest, colder waters. There are also some animals in this game that will attack you. Like these, which I hate. Have I not scanned those before? Why is it telling me I can scan it? I could have sworn that I have. I could have sworn that I've scanned these, but maybe I didn't. I don't know. Wow, I thought I had scanned those. But anyway, many animals do have defenses to help protect themselves. A lot of these animals on this planet tend to be really aggressive. There are many animals on Earth that are also quite aggressive, and aggression is often a way to protect their resources, such as if they're guarding a territory or if they're guarding their offspring, or to protect themselves. But a lot of these types of games will make you feel like everything in the ocean is going to be out to get you, and I have not been attacked by anything in the ocean before. I have watched damselfish attack other animals in front of me, but they have not attacked me, although I have many friends who have been attacked by damselfish. I have been attacked by bluegill in fresh water. They have bitten me. They've tried to pull my dive foot off. But a lot of these places will make you think that there's all of these dangerous animals that are trying to attack you. And there certainly are organisms that you should be, and species that you should be maintaining your distance from, that you should be educated on before you go snorkeling or scuba diving anywhere, that you should be cautious of. But shark attacks, for example, are extremely rare. There's certain species that are more aggressive than others, for example, like bull sharks, but as long as you are maintaining your distance and treating them with respect, and you're not grabbing onto their fins, you should not be touching wildlife, you're fine. But many organisms on this planet are super aggressive, which is fascinating and would be something interesting to study, particularly because it's so many that are aggressive. One of the other things, I'm about to do something wild. Whichever big one we see first is the one we're going to talk about. Whether or not it be the reefbacks or our friend that's not really my friend, the reaper. Many animals can get bigger in water, like in the ocean. For example, the blue whale is the largest species we've ever had on Earth, because you can afford to be bigger in water, the way that the water carries weight, and the way that you're allowed to be able to grow in water. And so it is common that you'll see larger animals. Many of the big ones in this game are larger than what you'll see on Earth. But it wouldn't be out of the realm of possibility for there to be like really large animals here. But interestingly, on Earth, like the really large animals tend to eat the smallest animals in the ocean, whereas here that is not the case. Now I saw it. There it is. So we're just gonna like get a little like view of it, okay? Not close enough for it to potentially sense us, but I'm aware that if you can hear it, it can quote-unquote see you, but I've had a good track record thus far, but not attacking us. But anyway, if you're big like this, you do have to consume more. But there it is. We're gonna just admire it from a distance, and now we're gonna turn around and leave. We've seen it. I think that's enough. I hear the warpers and then I freak out, like, internally. Like, I'm like, ah! This right here! This is what I'm used to diving in. This is what we call lower visibility, where you see it's kind of difficult to see everything. It's kind of green, because there's a lot of algae in that water. And some days the visibility is better than others. So you might go diving one day and the visibility is awful, and then you go a different day and it's great. So it just depends. But let's go back to home base. Hopefully this kind of satiated some of your curiosity. This is not an end-all be-all, but the people requested, and so I just kind of wanted to talk, and this is more supposed to be chill, not the end-all be-all. So don't be like, oh my god, are you actually a marine biologist? Because you could have done so much better. We're just doing this for fun. It's just for fun. But anyway, I hope you enjoyed. If you did enjoy, please leave a like, a comment. A nice comment would be wonderful. Subscribe so you can see more from me. Let me know what kind of marine games you'd love to see me play in the future. We're going to play The Last of Us Part 2 because we just did the first one. If you haven't seen that playthrough with me, please do. I've never played Dredge before. We could play Dredge. I've never played Dave the Diver. We could play that. All kinds of options. And then I will also do one of these for Subnautica Below Zero. But anyway, I hope you enjoyed. Let's go look at my tank. My big beautiful tank with all of my critters. Aren't they beautiful? But anyway, I hope you enjoyed and that you learned something. And I'll see you next time. Bye!